to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well, Zach. Doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. Doing all right. Episode 97 here today. I don't know, we don't really shout that out as we start most of our episodes, but I figure we're closing in on 100. That's kind of a big deal.
That is a huge deal. I didn't realize that either because, like you said, we don't really acknowledge
It's
it.
not like it's in the title of the on YouTube or the podcast apps or anything.
Yeah.
So,
but damn,
maybe
it's coming up.
We're gonna have to have a celebration. Well, I do have right here as we're getting started. I have our calendar mapped out, so that means that in 3 weeks we'll have to do something special. But today, before we get into things, we got to lay down the schedule. What's on tap? We're doing the Little Things review, the latest on HBO Max from Warner Brothers, and as promised, we're finally getting into it. WandaVision segment to open up. So, talking about episode 4 on Disney Plus. We'll do that after we just, chat, have our little intro session. But while we're laying out some schedules, like I said, we'll give you a rundown of what you need to be watching to keep up with Inside the Film Room over the next month. So today, like I said, The Little Things and WandaVision. Watch WandaVision every week because that's how we're going to start our episodes. But next week, Malcolm and Marie on Netflix. Then the following week, the 15th, will be Judas and the Black Messiah, another HBO Max in theaters release. Then after that, as long as we're able to see it, Saint Maud on the 21st. That's on Epix. I don't know how to get that, but I guess I will so I can see it. Finally coming out from A24. And then we'll close the month with another HBO Max Warner Brothers release of Tom and Jerry. So mark your calendars. That's what's going on in the next couple weeks. But Johnny, what's going on today? How have you been? It's been 2 weeks since we did an episode.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Just trying to, catch up on what we need to catch up on. I literally just finished watching The Little Things. I hate breaking up movies. I usually never do it, but I started it late the other night, and for some reason I was at my girlfriend's house, and the Wi-Fi was acting funny, and it was literally almost like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it kept pausing and like freezing, and there was like 30 minutes left, and I was like, I literally cannot do this anymore. Like I can't try to reboot it or anything. So I just went to sleep, and then I finished it like 24 hours later, late last night before I went to bed.
It's devastating. I feel like that's probably what kept you from really getting into the movie. That's it. I think.
Hey, well, that's an argument could be made for sure. But I also, of course, had WandaVision. Went back and rewatched the first 3 episodes that we got to see early, and watched it with Reagan because we finally finished our MCU marathon as well, which was.
What were the final thoughts from her on Endgame, on Infinity War, everything?
She loved it. I mean, she really, and we talked about it a little bit because it was really my idea, and she really had to kind of brave it at first because she wasn't sure like what she would think, but I mean, she ended up loving it, and she really enjoyed it. And Endgame, I mean, she was sobbing on the couch when, spoiler alert, Tony Stark dies at the end of Endgame.
Whoa. Come on, man.
It was wild because right before like he died and like as we're kind of leading up to it, she was just like, this was early in the movie. I think it was when he showed back up and was like, okay, I'll help you like with the time travel thing. And she was like, Tony Stark, like Iron Man, might be my favorite character like ever, like in anything. And this is like someone who's like a trained actor, like has read and like watched like so many musicals and plays, and like it was just, I did not expect her to end up saying that from where we were at the start of watching all these. And she was just like talking like about like his character development, like his arc and everything. And you really, I mean, I can't disagree. I mean, I think seeing them all like that for the first time, because I'd never watched them so quickly all together before, you really do like get a better sense of it. And it is, you know, it was rewarding. It was fun experience. And I would recommend anyone who hasn't at some point do it, because it is a really fun thing, and do it with a friend or a partner or something.
Especially since they're all on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more convenient now, I think. And with so many people having Disney Plus, you can just knock them out over a month or two. But yeah, so
quick question. I'm wondering, I have never done that to the extent that you just did, like the full marathon.
Right.
What any change of heart as I know you watched the Ant-Man movies and Captain Marvel for the first time, so those weren't rewatches for you, but thoughts on those, and then like anything that, wow, this is better than I remembered, this is worse than I remembered, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Because a lot of them I was revisiting for the first time in literally years, like some of them since theaters, which might have been 5-10 years ago. Yeah, so Captain Marvel and Ant-Man and the Wasp were the only two that I had never seen. Ant-Man I had seen once, and that was in theaters. The same could be said for some others, but this was the first two fresh watches. Ant-Man, the original, I like, a good amount. I mean, it's a fun, kind of kooky, more like comedic take on the superhero movie. You can definitely see some of the shades of Edgar Wright, because he, originally developed it before it got kind of taken off of his hands by Kevin Feige. But, I'm not crazy about like other people are. So the sequel, I didn't have the highest expectations. I thought it was fine. It's not like necessarily, bad, but it's very silly and like very like, don't think like too long or like hard about anything that happens, because then you might be like, okay, this doesn't really like make sense.
I want to say like, I definitely agree with I like it. I'm a big fan of the Ant-Man movies. I think they're very underrated. I think that it suffers a little bit, your reaction, I guess, by the fact of like watching it now. I know you still watched it like in this sequence, but like, for us seeing it in theaters, it came out a month or two after Infinity War.
Yeah.
So it was like heartbreak, devastating, global scale, like massive stuff. And then it's like, okay, we're taking this small adventure. Yeah. It's very silly. It's very lighthearted. Like for all of us that were seeing it like in real time, I was like, wow, this could not have been more perfect. This is what I needed after something that was so devastating.
Fair, for sure. And that's funny, because that's something I definitely thought about as we were watching them. And as we finished Infinity War, which Reagan loved and like was mind blown by, like when the credits rolled on that, she was just like, what the hell just happened? Which I think is how we all felt when we actually saw it in theaters. But no, she loves the original Ant-Man as well, which is funny. Like when we finished watching the first Ant-Man, because she had seen it maybe once before that in theaters, and she was crazy about Ant-Man. Like she thought it was hilarious and really loved like the character. And she rated that like 4.5 out of 5 or like a 5 out of 5. Like she really, really liked it. And then we watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she was like, she gave it like a 3 or something like that. And I was just like, okay, wow. And she was like, it's just like, we were both talking about it, and we said, it's just from watching it. I don't know if it's just watching it now, if, because you were talking about how it was back in theaters in that like kind of time frame. But it's like, how do you have Infinity War and then Endgame, like the two of the best, two of the most epic, like intense ones, and then you have like kind of this like low key detour like thrown in between them? You know what I mean? It just,
and also Captain Marvel was in between them as well.
Yeah, and so Captain Marvel.
Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think both of those like suffered. They got a bit of like, I don't know, not like hate. I know Captain Marvel got a lot of hate for a lot of reasons, mostly unjustified, but like some of it was just like because of the fact that, okay, we're all just waiting around for Endgame. We know Endgame is coming. Exactly. I feel like the timing of it was awesome. Obviously you had to introduce her before Endgame, but like the fact it got hurt by the fact that people just wanted to get to the end, and so they're like,
exactly,
oh, we have to go through this to get there, and they thought it was just like a filler.
I definitely understand that for sure. So that was kind of our feelings on Ant-Man and the Wasp. And then Captain Marvel. Okay, so we just watched Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we're like, we did these in the same day, mind you. We watched like the second half of Infinity War, all of Ant-Man and the Wasp, all of Captain Marvel, and all of Endgame in the same like evening.
My goodness.
I got off work and then we went to work watching these movies. So after Ant-Man and the Wasp, we're like, okay, like we had low expectations for Captain Marvel just because I hadn't liked any footage I'd seen from it. I never saw it originally in theaters, obviously. She'd never seen it. And she's not a huge fan of Brie Larson. I'm not a particularly big fan of Brie Larson either.
Rude.
But we were like, okay, let's see how it is. She was like, this is going to be terrible. Like, this is going to be so bad. Like, we're not going to like this at all. And then like halfway through, I wasn't crazy about like the beginning. I think once she gets to Earth, it gets a lot better. Which is funny because I think the Guardians of the Galaxy movies do such a good job with like all this crazy space stuff. But once she got to Earth and she, Sam Jackson shows up as Nick Fury, and she kind of gets that extra support from like those characters. I was like, okay, we turned to each other like halfway through and we're like, okay, this is actually like considered way better than what we thought it was going to be. I thought Brie Larson was good.
I watched that twice in theaters, but I don't think I've seen it since then.
Yeah.
And I remember my biggest takeaway being like, it was refreshing almost because it was like, okay, we've been in such these massive crossover events, the Civil Wars, the Infinity Wars, Endgame, like we've dealt with all of this, and then to go back to like the small scale of an origin movie, I felt like that was fun to do in Phase 3.
Yeah, I definitely thought this is, again, I didn't think the movie was like really great overall, but I still thought it was good and I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And Brie Larson was good. I thought the character, was done justice. I thought, Sam Jackson, was, I mean, he was a huge asset for that movie, I think. Just because their banter is so good and it's a character you're already familiar with, so it kind of makes it easier to adjust to someone who's completely brand new and you don't like know anything about. And so, I quite liked it. I thought the story was pretty clever. Like, I thought the twist was really, like, definitely took me by surprise and, like, made me think, like, wow, I didn't see that at all. And I feel like I should have. So that was fun. And I just thought I did a good job setting her up. And then rewatching Endgame, having seen that, was added to the experience, obviously, because I cared more about her. I understood more about her connection with Nick Fury and all that, and even like the little beeper thing from the end of Infinity War. I was like, okay, that's what that is. This is where she gets it, and her colors, like on her costume, just the little things, no pun intended, I thought was the really kind of pulled it all together. So it was great.
The little things that make it worthwhile. It's the beeper. It's the colors of the costume. It's the little things.
To get you killed, Jimmy. But yeah, no, I liked it quite a lot, and it was fun to see them, even though I wasn't crazy about those movies. I think seeing them in that sequence and then how it all adds up makes it like more enriching, obviously.
And now just the fact that you can be like, I still have yet to see The Incredible Hulk, which is like technically MCU, but like fringe. By the skin of its teeth, it's part right. Of it. So like, I guess I can't say that I've seen the entire Infinity Saga, but now that it's nice that you can finally say that now.
Yeah, and overall, the last little thing I'll say is that I think more than anything, I was surprised by just how much my ratings and like my appreciation of most of the movies kind of went up, even by like the smallest of margins. Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, which I know are like kind of two sequels that get trashed on or just they're not like appreciated very much. I didn't think Iron Man 2 was like particularly good, but I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was like enjoyable, kind of like a messy, fun ride, just because those characters are so fun. You're coming off of not Avengers, but the first Iron Man, which I think is still one of the best movies like in the franchise. And you're just kind of seeing them grow a little bit more. You get Don Cheadle as Rhodes, which I think is an upgrade. I think he's an awesome character, and Don Cheadle's hilarious. And you know, Pepper, and then Scarlett Johansson comes in as Black Widow, and I thought it worked. And Iron Man 3 I thought was also better than I remembered for sure, better than Iron Man 2, and I thought it was a good like chapter and like Tony's story, because you have to watch that to really understand like where he goes from there, and even just other ones like Age of Ultron, and even Thor: The Dark World, which I think a lot of people say is like the very worst MCU movie. I still think it's better than the first Thor movie. Like I was blown away by how much I thought the first Thor movie was bad. Like I thought it was just terrible. So I thought Thor: The Dark World was actually a step up. And just overall, I was like, wow, this is like, I think seeing them all together so quickly makes you appreciate them more. I think maybe it's easier to like forgive some of the bad things, or like you just like spending time with those characters. You know what I mean?
Like that's the thing. Like I know it's something that I've said a couple times, like whether it's Star Wars or Marvel or Harry Potter or any sort of like franchise that I like really love, that it's like, even if we're saying that, oh, Thor is bad, you might have a different opinion. But if we're saying like a specific movie is like bad or not great, like it's still, to me, is like bad in MCU terms is like minimum 3 stars. You know, like I still think that it's still a movie that I'll like go and I'll enjoy it to an extent. I'll have fun. Like, sure, it's not going to win an Oscar, but like I'm gonna not be upset that I watched it. You might have different feelings, but that's something that I always think about, like with these movies, that it's just like, it's just a good time, like you said, having fun with these characters, getting to like spend time in the world. So
yeah, and
never a bad one to me.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think it almost benefits from that mindset, because the ones that are truly great or amazing, like or close to masterpiece level, I think it's just that much more obvious when you see them standing next to the other ones, like if that makes sense. And you can tell which entries are like truly special, like truly like the best of the best, because they're all pretty good, I think you could say, but the ones that stand out were like really stand out. So it was a great time. Again, would totally recommend everyone doing it. I assume, I think it's safe to say I'll do it again at some point in my life, maybe when the next Avengers movie rolls around in 3 or 4 or 5 years or something.
Gotta get caught up with it. But let's talk about not what's happened, but what's happening right now. Let's go into some WandaVision chatter. Episode 4. So like you said, you rewatched the first 3. I have seen the first 2 twice. I've only seen the third one once. But now, Episode 4, We Interrupt This Program is the title here, which is a very fitting title.
That's funny.
Obviously, that's the, breaking news. We interrupt this program too, or whatever.
Yeah.
But literally, they are interrupting the program of WandaVision this episode. Little synopsis: Monica Rambeau, tasked with a special assignment regarding sentient weapons, goes missing. So let's kind of, spoiler alert for WandaVision episode 4. If you haven't watched it, skip ahead. We'll put the time codes in the description here. But I mean, I think we had to start at the very beginning of this episode, and I was blown away by the cold open, because what we get is the return. Like, you see like particles floating and then coming back together, and it's the return of the blip, of the snap, when everyone's coming back and just like panic ensues, because okay, we saw it in Endgame, we saw the heroes coming back,
right?
But what happens in the I'd never even thought about this, like what happens in the real world when everybody comes back? And so Monica Rambeau is at the hospital, and suddenly she comes back, and it's 5 years later, and there's no capacity at the hospital because suddenly 50% of the world's population are back. Like, it's just like chaos. But I thought that was such a cool little like connection to make.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I feel like, again, we can't like overthink this because it is the MCU and it is superhero fantasy movies, but like the blip is something. Obviously the snap was a huge, world breaking, universe breaking event, and you lost half the population, and the governments are falling apart, all these other things in 5 years and all that. But then the blip happens and everyone comes back, and you really like, I mean, this would almost be worse than the snap from like a logistics or like
You'd finally gotten to the point where it's like
standpoint.
You'd finally adjusted to like life without them, and things had started to get back to some sort of normalcy, and then it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like, you can't be upset that people are coming back that you thought were dead, but still, like, logistically speaking.
I mean, there'd be food crises, water crises, like a shelter, like pretty much everything you could imagine, and it would be a hellstorm for like the next several decades. But anyway, that point leads me to the other point, which I wondered if you noticed or had thought about, which is like a smaller, like strange detail. But I think Marvel is trying to kind of have their cake and eat it too with this little blip situation, because in Spider-Man Far From Home, the opening of that movie addressed the blip as well. And they talked about, it was basically an exposition dump kind of explaining, okay, this is what happened, this is what's going on. And they played it, of course, Spider-Man, they played it for laughs. It's a joke.
School project video.
Yeah, and there's like the handheld video and all that, and they're like playing a basketball game in the gym at the high school, and then the blip happens, and the people just like pop back in to the world. Like they're just immediately there, and they're like getting hit by like the basketball players and all that. Whereas in this, it's showing them like forming slowly, like in pieces, like you were kind of saying. So it's like, okay, in Far From Home, it was represented as being like they just pop back.
Instantaneous versus
like here, it's like they're being pieced together like over some time, which is like, okay, I guess obviously they're trying to go for a certain effect, and like with this like cold open and the emotional like aspect of it all, and like how like dramatic and kind of scary it would be. But it's just like, okay, you're trying to have it both ways. And it didn't like bother me necessarily, but as soon as it was going on, I was like, okay, this is not how they had already said it happened or like shown it to happen, if that makes sense.
You know, I didn't get too caught up in that. I wasn't too upset. I didn't notice it until you're just now saying this. I knew I had remembered that something like along those lines had happened in Spider-Man, but yeah, the I guess technical degree of whether they were coming back from dust or just appearing didn't cross my radar. I know you had just had your rewatch, so
I will say though, there. It is an effective opening. Like it's pretty well done, and I think you talked about in the group chat that you hadn't, and this was before I saw the episode, so you're being kind of cryptic, but you hadn't like thought about this thing in like that sense before, and I think that's true. Like, and again, I had just seen Far From Home, so in that it was like very funny and like played for laughs, but here it's like, okay, this is actually kind of like a freaky, scary situation to be in, like in the real world. Like if this were to happen, this is what it would be like, especially if you're in a hospital. So yeah, I thought it was effective, and it did kind of strike me as like, okay, wow, that I hadn't thought of it like that before. So it was interesting to see that. And of course, Monica, aka Geraldine, she's popped back, and we're immediately like from her point of view. Now, we all kind of knew before this, just because I can't remember like how it was kind of revealed or like let out, but we knew that she was the daughter of the character from Captain Marvel, basically.
Correct. We knew that Monica Rambeau had been cast, like that. Yeah, we knew that she was going to be playing the adult, the child of Maria Rambeau. Okay. So like we knew, like when she popped up, we knew that's Tiana Paris, the actress. We knew that she was going to be playing this character. So we knew that Geraldine wasn't like a real person.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to, before we go completely away from the blip, we don't have to talk too long about it, but there could have been one line in this episode that is really setting up a huge part of the MCU moving forward. And that's what's his name? Hayward, I think was like her boss at SWORD. Yeah. But I think it was him who said like, half our astronauts got dusted and haven't shown back up yet. And so missing space astronauts for SWORD, was that a hint at the Fantastic Four and how they're going to return or work into this universe? So very, very tiny detail, but you know how Marvel loves to like play with those Easter
Oh,
eggs
yeah.
and kind of set expectations.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have no idea how they're going to do Fantastic Four, of course, but we do know John Watts is directing it, and he's been doing the Spider-Man movies. And of course, he had to do his own little thing with the blip in Far From Home, and then now he's working on Spider-Man 3, and there's all speculation that these other Spider-Mans from different universes are going to be popping in, and we don't know if that's going to be related to. It must have something to do with the multiverse, and that multiverse was already established, like an Endgame. So I definitely think there's something to that. I think for sure. I think they do like to, in whatever way they can, big, small, whatever, set things up, and then when it comes back up later, it's like, okay, we can point to this little thing that's like evidence.
But we're on to them now. We know how they work. So
Exactly.
It's not going to be that, okay, we're in phase 2 and suddenly, wait, they did an Easter egg about this in phase 1. No, we know. We got the radars going.
Exactly. So I think that's something for sure.
What were your thoughts, like zooming out, what this episode as a whole? I know in the group text, the group chat, that Jake was not crazy about it. People were kind of, I don't know. I just like from seeing on Twitter, everybody like loves the MCU. So everybody's like always just hyping it up regardless of how good it is.
Yeah.
If it's good or bad, it's like unanimously like incredible on social media. I was still a big fan of this episode. I think that the breakup of, like we alluded to with the title, like this is the first episode that's not a ripping from a sitcom, not inspired by a sitcom, all set in Westview with Wanda and Vision. This is finally getting a look at what's going on from the outside world and what's causing it. We've got that backstory on Geraldine. We learn what SWORD is, the people with the helicopter and the beekeeper and all of that. But what were your thoughts on just like the episode as a whole and kind of breaking that format that we've seen so far?
Yeah. I thought, I mean, I was nervous going into this because I didn't get to catch up on it until after people had already seen it and were kind of talking about it. And so I tempered my expectations somewhat, but I liked what they did. I mean, I thought that this was, I think that they were getting into kind of a position where they might be losing people because they weren't used to
I
classic
completely agree.
sitcom style, and it's not a bunch of punchy action explosions like going on. It's literally like very true to these eras, like with the humor and the storylines and things. And like I was engaged with that for sure. But I can see where that kind of the audience and like people who expected maybe a certain thing from this and weren't getting it.
Right. I saw tweets from people who were like, I would have been out after episode 1 if this wasn't Marvel. Like if I didn't have faith in like the process. So
that's so silly because I feel like this is exactly what was advertised. Yeah. This is exactly what was advertised. Like this is exactly what they said it was going to be, what we saw it was going to be. Like, I guess people just thought that it was like a joke. Like, I guess people thought that they were like, oh, we'll have a little bit of sitcom stuff, but then it's going to turn into something else, which it will surely down the line. But
that's kind of the next point that I wanted to talk about. Like, what do you think is going to be, now that we've had this interruption in the program, how do you think it's going to go forward? Because we know that there's still like an Office-themed episode, a Modern Family-themed episode, I think like a Full House themed episode or something. Like,
well,
do we think it's going to be split or what?
No, I think. Well, I guess it depends on your meaning of split, but I think they're going to go back.
Split as in like one episode that is completely
I don't think so.
A sitcom, and then one that's like real world, or is it going to be like half real world, half sitcom?
No, I think it's going to be. I think they're going to continue with the sitcoms now because they got the first 3 done, and I think there's going to end up being about 3 eras that they're going to do, like specifically after this episode. So got to get into the 80s and the 90s and like the 21st century, like 2000s. And so I think they'll do those next 3, and then I think it'll go back to like it'll go straight into like Marvel things from that point forward. Like Wanda will be, kind of woken up from like what the hell is going on. We'll get like more of Jimmy Woo. We'll get more of Darcy, of course, and then the show will like close out that way. Like the last episode or two will be MCU, quote unquote, like style.
Right. It's interesting because there were interviews with why can't I think of his name right now? With Vision.
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany, yes. There were interviews with him, and he was quoted as saying like the finale of WandaVision will like shatter the way that viewers view the MCU. Like it'll completely blow them away and like make you think about it in completely new ways. So I don't know what that could be, but like whenever something like that has been alluded to in Marvel, like it's usually lived up to that. It's not usually just talk and nothing to back it up. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty much right with you there. I mean, I think it's going to be worthwhile in the long run. I mean, again, I've been enjoying it plenty just with what they've been doing, but I think people who have been critical of it or haven't been enjoying it as much will feel happy by the time we get to the end of it, I think.
Any speculation here as we head into that we haven't already mentioned of what you think might be going on? So this episode gave us the what's going on, I guess. We all kind of had this idea that, okay, Wanda is projecting this herself. This is like her utopia to somehow let her and Vision stay together.
Yeah.
But now, and so this episode, I guess, it didn't have like a quote unquote big reveal. It was mainly just confirming what we all knew, but we still have to figure out the how and the why of like this, of Westview, what's going on there. So do you have any sort of ideas of what could be? Is she doing this out of grief? Is she being forced to do this? Is any predictions?
No, I think she's chosen to do this. I think, and I have heard some theories as well, like recently. But basically, before I got any other theories and just watched this episode and was kind of reacting to like what they were saying, I think she's clearly she's aware of it. She's like, and the mention of Ultron and Pietro, like that was like disrupting the illusion that she kind of set up for herself, obviously. And so she didn't like that, and so that's why Geraldine got shot out. And Monica got kind of disrupted from her, and it's unclear as well. Was that truly Monica undercover, or was that Geraldine? Like, was she in a trance of some sort?
I've seen one theory that's saying that like whenever Wanda gets distracted, the people within Westview have like flashes of their real life, of their real identities,
right?
Because like she got distracted by the mention of Ultron and her brother, and then like got distracted by having the babies, or like there were a couple, I don't remember all the instances, but like it referenced like when Dottie had the crackling on the radio distracted Wanda, and then Dottie had like a flash of like what's going on here, and the dinner scene.
I think that's spot on for sure, because these people, I mean, they talk about, you're mentioning the dinner scene, the hearts they have completely different names in the real world. And so I think they are being kind of, it's messed up to think about that all these people are basically being held against their will and forced to live out this kind of weird fantasy for Wanda, essentially. I'm very curious to see how they kind of explain it all, like if they justify any of it, because Wanda is of course like emotionally, I mean, she's had a terrible life, let's be real, but more recently, of course, with losing Vision, the only real person in the world that she had like a genuine connection with, it's kind of like maybe she's having like a crisis, like of sorts, like mentally.
I'm curious if this is going to be like a Wanda turning into a villain type storyline,
right? And
like almost like a Dark Phoenix type. Like, okay, you're not gonna. This is how I'm here and able to live with Vision, even though he's gone, and you're not gonna take that away from me. So I'm gonna turn against you. Type.
Exactly, and I think That, and there's the other question of it, okay, if she's not doing it herself, like if she's not choosing to do this, is it the alternatives are she's having like such a mental crisis that she can't control that she's doing it, essentially, like it's almost like an episode of sorts, or is she being like coerced or tricked basically by some outside force that we have not seen yet into doing this? And there's been talk of like Mephisto, that, you know, could it be like literally like the devil? Like, because in the comics, I mean, death or like the devil like always pop up. Or there's also the one thing that I caught last night that I was watching a video about that I thought was interesting is Catherine Hahn's character. In the comics, there's a woman who has like a similar name. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. And basically she is like a witch that helps Scarlet Witch like basically hone her powers. So instead of being more like a mutant, it's more almost like supernatural. And I think that kind of may be tying into what happens with her in the Doctor Strange movie that's coming up.
Because this is leading into that, as we know.
Exactly. So where's the line between, you know, mutation and superpower and supernatural? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be interesting. And also there's been talk of the House of M, which is a huge, I don't know if you've seen that on Twitter.
I've definitely seen it mentioned. This
huge storyline from the comics from like 15 or so years ago that was all about Scarlet Witch and basically revolves around her suffering like a mental breakdown, kind of what I was like hinting on earlier, and trying to like alter reality to recreate like what she's lost, essentially, which is pretty bang on for what we've seen so far. And of course, you know, she's lost Pietro, she's lost Vision. Now of course, Vision's a big part of the show. We've seen him walking and talking and being involved. Haven't seen anything from Pietro yet, so it's gonna be interesting. Is Aaron Taylor Johnson gonna show up? Is Evan Peters?
I've heard rumors of Evan Peters. Yeah, that's.
So I think that's something that'll be like very interesting to keep an eye on, and will be pretty awesome and fun whenever it ends up happening. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the context is, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see more. I think that they're towing the line pretty well so far, at least for me. So yeah, I mean, I'm on for it. I'm all game.
Same here. We'll have to keep this segment going. Episode 5 next week. And we'll be back here to start off our Inside the Film Room episode with some WandaVision talk. But I guess now we're probably about 45 minutes into the episode. Should we get started with some news?
Absolutely.
All right. Nothing too crazy. I guess nothing too in-depth. A lot of this is just like little sort of headlines that we're going to then talk about. But the biggest, which I'm still kind of confused on it, for me, the biggest personally, there was a report that I don't remember. Was it Variety, I think? Or was it Deadline? It was one of the two.
It was the Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, okay. I was way off. But live action Harry Potter series supposedly in the works at HBO Max. But then Warner Brothers and HBO Max came out and were like, this is not happening.
No,
I don't know.
I don't trust them.
Yeah, I don't trust that. I feel like they would keep that under wraps if it was.
Yeah.
But literally beyond that, there is no like news whatsoever about it. Like, are they adapting the 7 books into a long form TV series, or is this like an alternate story within the Harry Potter universe? What's going on here? So first of all, do you want this? And if you do, what would you like to see? What kind of story would you like to have told?
Yeah, I want it. I mean, I know there's a lot of real world issues that have kind of tainted.
Don't let J.K. Rowling involved. Let her get her check and sit this one out. Like
the thing is, she has like ultimate creative power,
right?
So it's really whatever she wants. I mean, I know the thing is, in that story that was reported, the reason we don't really know anything about this at this point, and probably the reason why it's so easy for WB and HBO to deny that this is going on, is that like it's supposedly extremely preliminary like discussions. Like they're literally just talking about like ideas. And I think it makes too much sense. I mean, HBO Max is going to be a huge like service. I think it's still, you know, getting off the ground, but I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be, I mean, if we're talking about movies and like studios moving away from traditional release and traditional like storytelling and all that, this is where they're going to be going to. And Warner's been huge for, you know, 100 years now.
And just like knowing all of the Warner Brothers like connections between Warner and HBO of like,
exactly.
Okay, we're getting all of these DC superhero shows that are going to be made. We're getting Dune and shows spun off of that. We have we have Harry Potter in the bag. We have Game of Thrones that we're continuing to work on here. We have, I mean, I know Lord of the Rings series is going to Amazon, but still, like, those are like Warner Brothers productions. So maybe in the future, once whatever Amazon is done with, you know, like there could be some sort of connection there. So it's like just such massive properties that like, how would they not make this into shows if they love making money, which we know they do.
Exactly. And I think it's just a no-brainer. And I haven't been as into Harry Potter for sure since I was like a kid, or since the movies ended more specifically. But you know, I definitely have a soft spot for it. It's definitely like a huge part of my childhood and growing up. And I love, you know, I've been fortunate enough to go down to, you know, Universal Studios and see the, you know, the Hogwarts like recreation and the Diagon Alley recreation. And it's still magic every time. And I think it's just too rich of a universe to not, you know, come up with some ideas, come up with some concepts. I would be down for something completely original in that world, like a completely unrelated story. I know, of course, on the Star Wars side of things, people are always, you know, more recently been complaining, please stop.
Don't connect to the Skywalker saga.
Not doing Skywalker stuff. And in that, it's like you have an entire literal universe to explore. And so that's definitely makes sense here. I think you could do something that's completely unrelated to Harry Potter and completely unrelated to, you know, Voldemort and Dumbledore and all that stuff and have it work. I think that would be cool. I think that would require a lot of, you know, imagination. It would be something totally fresh. I'd still also be down to see like a prequel storytelling, maybe like.
I mean, that's one of the big things that people have always begged for is like a Marauders series of James and Lupin and Sirius
at Hogwarts. Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that
would be cool.
That would be cool because it's people you know, but it's not a story you've really seen. So I think that makes sense. And also, I think I would personally, I mean, this might be heresy to say, and I do love the film franchise a lot, but I think it'd be cool to see an updated long form version of that story. I mean, people complain, especially the book fans, that they aren't nearly as good as the books is the one complaint. And then the second complaint is they leave out so much, and that's the reason why they aren't as good. And there's also been complaints about, you know, some of the casting choices that they did back in the day and things like that, even though a lot of them were on point. But I think it'd be cool. I think you could do, and the books vary in size, of course, but you could do, you know, 5 or 6 episodes for the first couple of books, you know, 5 or 6 for Sorcerer's Stone, and then 5 or 6 for Chamber of Secrets. And then as the books get longer, you could do 6 or 7, 8 or 9, just depending.
Right. Obviously very different from in like content than like the series of unfortunate events, but like a similar thing to how they handled that, splitting that up on Netflix into like multiple seasons.
So I think that's a good point. I think that's something, a format you could look at. What do you think? Like, would you be down to see the exact, you know, the Harry Potter story kind of retold?
Yeah. I'm really down for everything that you said. Obviously, the books and the movies are sacred texts. They're like revered, especially for someone like me, a fan like me. But I'm always down to see. It might be a little too soon to do that.
Yeah, it's been 10 years.
Just 10 years this year since the last movie came out. So to kind of maybe wait a little bit longer for that. But
right.
I don't know if it's gonna be. Maybe they would like test the waters with whatever show this is potentially, and then be like, okay, Harry Potter has success in television format, right, so now we're gonna do that. But like, I'm always down for the Marauders story. I think that would be very cool. Like you said, similar characters that that you have some understanding of, but you don't know
Right.
all of their life story to kind of dive into.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we know that, is it confirmed or was that just speculation? The whole like open world Harry Potter video game. I think that was confirmed, right? That
Yeah, that's like
back
a thing. That's a thing that's happening. Yeah.
and that's going to be like set at Hogwarts, that you're just like a student and you can go and do your own adventure. So like,
yeah,
obviously still at Hogwarts, but like some sort of like just completely new era of what the wizarding world is like. I think you could do plenty with that, and just like use Hogwarts as your base, your connection versus any sort of character. So I would be down to see that, or even not necessarily a student at Hogwarts, just something within the world of magic and have that be the story. So I'm really open for anything. Just don't necessarily don't do Fantastic Beasts, and don't let J.K. Rowling get too involved.
right. I think that's all fair. So, okay, two things before we move on. We just talked about all the different possibilities. What would you, if you were in charge, what would you choose to make? And two, what would you bet on them making? You've got to bet money on what they'll end up doing.
If I had to bet, I would go with like a Young Marauders prequel type thing.
Okay.
But if I could choose, I would try and just do something completely new.
Okay.
Anything from any guesses from you?
Ooh,
Or wishes?
that's tough. Damn. I think it would be so cool to see something entirely new, personally. I think that's the safest route too, because you're not stepping on anyone's toes. You're not, nostalgia baiting or anything like that. You do something with brand new characters, unrelated. Harry Potter doesn't show up, Dumbledore doesn't show up, anything like that.
Future, past, present, same. When does this take place?
I think you do it after everything that happened with Voldemort. I think you do it after the 7th book and the 7th film, the 8th film.
Because that was what, 90, 94, maybe 91. Like that was when the 7th book ended. So I think I've always wondered, like, it would be cool to see like in the era of like social media and like the modernized time, like how has the magical world changed?
I think that's a great point. I think a lot of people forget that these movies are set in the past, honestly. Because
it doesn't necessarily feel like it happens in the 90s, like when you're watching the movie.
Yeah, because of course a lot of it's set in the wizarding world, so a lot of our technology and things don't pop up. But I think it would be cool to see something take place between the end of this, the series and today, or set even during today, maybe. But maybe, I think there's just so much, possibility in that, whether it has to do with our technology and how they're adapting to that, and just the evolution. I mean, there's 20 years plus of things there. So I think that would be dope.
Well, we'll see what actually ends up happening. Hopefully there is something, even though they're denying it. I still think there's something there. Next up on the docket, your boy, Johnny. What's going on with your boy?
My boy, T. Shal. Timothy Chalamet is reteaming with the director of Call Me by Your Name, which earned him his first Oscar nom. He's like the youngest Oscar nominee in like 83 years or something insane. Luca Guadagnino, to do an adaptation of a novel called Bones and All. And co-star will be Taylor Russell as the female lead. I've only seen her in Waves, which she was fantastic in. She ended up...
Was she also the lead of Escape Room, I think?
I haven't seen Escape Room, and I don't know about that, so you'd have to double check.
I'll Google it. I have seen it. It wasn't great. It was a January movie back when those were a thing, before COVID, but
right.
I'm pretty sure that was her.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I liked her. I loved her in Waves. I thought she had a really subtle performance. She kind of dominated that second half of the movie. And this is described, I don't know anything about the book, but it's described as a horror love story, and supposedly, ironically, controversially maybe, revolves around cannibalism. And this is, of course, in the wake of the Army Hammer allegations and, the scandal involving him abusing his former partners, making horrible comments about literally like eating them. He's quitting basically every job he has right now. He's been removed from like several projects recently. So his career might be over, but Luca and Chalamet are certainly charging ahead. And I saw also that, people were saying, is this going to be, I think the main question is, of course, it's kind of controversial that this news is coming out right now, of course, but is this going to be something that we see, in the next year or so? Is this way down the road? I mean, Guadagnino has such a, full slate of things that he's supposed to be making. And I said this on Twitter. I said, hopefully this is something they do, very soon. I would like to see this done soon. I think Chalamet and Russell are like good points of the career to do it. And I think, the other things that he has on his plate are like remakes and sequels. And while this is based on a novel, it would be something more original than, another Scarface or another Lord of the Flies or, the Call Me By Your Name sequel, which may or may not happen now, I would assume, with the Armie Hammer situation. So I don't know. What do you think? What would you like to see, or what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm reading the synopsis the like back cover, I guess, of the book. And so it's a young adult novel, but it sounds pretty intense. And it seems like it's just this girl, Taylor Russell, I believe, would be the cannibal in the book. But I don't know. It sounds really out there, but I have not seen Call Me By Your Name, but obviously big fans of Chalamet and Russell both. So I would be down to see anything that has them in it together.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm always up for something weird. And this certainly sounds like that. And I think it'd be cool to see Chalamet in particular in this role because, I think going from something like Little Women and, Call Me By Your Name to like a horror love cannibalism story, it would be a fun detour.
Yeah, so this is what it says. Marin Yearly doesn't just break hearts, she devours them. Love may come in many shapes and sizes, but for Marin, it always ends the same, with her hiding the evidence and her mother packing up the car. But when her mother abandons her the day after her 16th birthday, Marin goes looking for the father she's never known and finds much more than she bargained for along the way.
Oh, my God. That sounds like a blast. I'm down for that. I would assume
Timothée Chalamet would be a love interest that is victimized, maybe.
Yeah, someone she.
He's definitely not her dad.
Yeah, no, I think it'll probably be someone that she, maybe wants to eat at first, and then decides, oh, maybe I love him. I'm not going to eat him now. So I'm down for it. 100%.
I'm in as well. Let's do it. So moving on, next big event, I guess, the biggest event that is happening between last podcast and this is Sundance, which is going on right now, virtually and I guess semi in person at some remote locations.
Yeah.
But Johnny, you've got a little Sundance report for us of the biggest hits so far, the best buzz, what's being sold, what's being bought. Anything in particular here?
Yeah. So of course, I mean, there's a ton of films premiering at Sundance and a lot of them sound really good. I'm getting excited. I've already added like half a dozen to my most anticipated list of the year. But I'm just going to talk about 3 that have gotten the most buzz or sound perhaps the most interesting. So number 1, Coda. It premiered on opening night. So it was kind of the first one to really make waves and got, glowing reviews across the board. And it tells the story of a high school senior who's the only hearing person in her deaf family. And she, as she's getting ready to graduate high school, she is kind of torn between pursuing her dreams, potentially leaving her family, and, staying and helping keep her family together. And I think it's a unique concept. I mean, I can't remember a single movie I've ever seen that sounds anything like that. But it's also interesting that it comes in the wake of Sound of Metal, which was another, film that focused on the deaf community, and someone who went from having hearing to losing that. And so I think it's kind of cool to see that continue. Apple after all these reviews came out, it got into a heated auction with Amazon, and Apple ended up winning out. They paid a record $22.5 million to acquire it. It's this new Sundance record after Palm Springs broke it last year. So I can't wait. I mean, I would assume we're not going to see this until maybe September, October, something like that later this year. Because it sounds like it could be, ripe for some awards contention, but who knows? Right. But I'm excited. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting my Sundance report from you directly, so I have not really been keeping up too much with the buzz, but that sounds definitely like something I'd be into. I agree with you that if it is worth 22.5, although Palm Springs was worth that money and came out over the summer, so. But this does sound a little bit more of a traditional type awards contender versus Palm Springs as maybe like like a screenplay contender. Yeah, so
agreed.
So this sounds more of like a premiere type fall slate.
But yeah, no. So I'm excited for that. Second up, we got Mass, which seems to be the highest rate of the film festival so far. I checked it out on Letterboxd. It has an average of a 4.0. And pretty much all the ratings I've seen are like 4.5, 5s. So I had not an idea about this film. I had not even heard of it. Actor Fran Kranz is making his screenwriting and directorial debut with this film. People will probably best know him as the stoner from Cabin in the Woods. And I think it's pretty wild that now he's kind of headlining Sundance and making such an impact here. But it stars Jason Isaacs and Ann Dowd. It focuses on a real-time conversation between the parents of a mass shooting victim and the parents of the killer. All the reactions and reviews I've seen so far is described as like one of the most devastating films they've ever seen. And like it just wrecked them, like they can't stop thinking about it, like now they have to like go move on to some other movie or like write a review or something. I'm always up for a good emotionally devastating film, especially, I mean, this subject matter is, of course, thankfully the one bright side to the pandemic has been not as many mass shootings for sure, because people are not congregating or anything. In the United States, obviously it's kind of an epidemic of another type, but I am all over this. I mean, I think it sounds, the acting in particular has been praised, and I think Ann Dowd in particular has been singled out as potentially an Oscar nominee next year. I mean, they're already saying we haven't even gotten the Oscar noms for this year, and they're already saying that Mass will probably be hanging around at the end of this year for awards. And I was lucky enough; I hopped on to the Sundance site, and I got a single ticket to watch it tomorrow morning, actually. So maybe
that's the thing. These movies, they're always starting at 10 a.m. and I can't do that.
I know. Yeah. But next week on the podcast, I'll definitely give some thoughts, quick thoughts on it and say if it lives up to the hype or not. What do you think about that premise and how it's making some noise thus far?
Yeah. I mean, I again, hadn't heard anything about it until you bringing it up, but just that subject matter alone sounds, as you put it, just devastating. I feel like that's something that, I don't know, my first thought was like a Boy Erased, which obviously very different. That was about, was the Lucas Hedges movie where he was like coming out and was going to conversion camp, but like that sort of like LGBTQ story, that's like the devastating subject matter of him being like just terrorized by his family and those traumatic events. It's like a similar vibe of like devastation of what I would like anticipate from how I felt going into that movie versus what I'm hearing about this movie, I think.
Yeah. It's definitely, I mean, again, this is similar to Coda. I mean, this isn't like a premise that I've ever heard of before. So I'm excited to see how it plays out. And then finally, we got Gerard Carmichael, who's people might know better as like a comedian. And he's making his feature directorial debut. He's directed some comedy specials and some shorts before, but this film that he's debuted here is called On the Count of Three. And it focuses on two friends, Val, who is played by Carmichael, and Kevin, who's played by Christopher Abbott, who make a suicide pact. And basically, I think we can garner the title on the count of 3 is probably them counting down to shoot each other. But it sounds like kind of a crazy like premise. I think also it says on the little synopsis I read that they have some business to attend to before they actually end up, killing each other, killing themselves. I'm not exactly sure. I'm trying to stay as clear as possible away from like spoilers or just too many details. I don't know if it's like kind of like a crime, like thriller, if there's like things that they're going to go and do other things like with other people involved. But I've seen it compared to Good Time. I've seen Christopher Abbott's performance in particular compared to Rob Pattinson's in Good Time. And I've also seen several people say that this movie, along, Good Time was an A24 film, that this movie would make, perfect sense going and sitting at A24. So we'll see who acquires that, who ends up getting it. But I wouldn't be surprised with the kind of what I've seen so far, the comments that have been made, if A24 is fishing around. They also like Christopher Abbott as well. So what do you think of that premise, Zach? Do you think it sounds kind of like dark, but it sounds like it could be
like that's what it's like, dark and sounds sort of comedic.
Yeah, I think
almost,
it's a dark comedy.
But then like the comparison to Good Time is not very comedic at all. So I kind of don't really know. It's interesting, but I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's probably going to be a little bit before I need to worry about figuring out what to expect. I'm not going to be able to see this anytime soon, I don't think. So
yeah, but I hope we can see it, as soon as possible. It sounds, I think this sounds like the most, again, dark subject matter, but hopefully some dark comedy as well. I think it sounds like the most, again, you're thinking of A24, you're thinking of Good Time, perhaps maybe the most like pure, like entertaining of the 3 that we just talked about. Especially if there's dark comedy involved. I'm all over that. And again, I've been praising Christopher Abbott recently on Twitter. I think he's just a really exciting actor, so I'm excited to see another performance from him in particular.
You know what I'm excited to see?
Let's hear it.
Some monster on monster carnage. Changing subjects abruptly. This happened last week, before, I guess, during our hiatus week.
Yeah,
but we can't just let it go by that there was a Godzilla versus Kong trailer and not talk about it, because this movie, okay, I have not seen, I think we spoke about this maybe last episode. I have not seen either of the Godzilla movies. I have not seen Kong Skull Island. I've seen the Peter Jackson King Kong, which is not related to this.
Oh my God.
Dude, those movies were not. Bro. Huh? Hold the L. These movies. For you being someone who's like anti like Fast and the Furious type stuff, like I feel like this is like Fast and the Furious with monsters in terms of like turn your brain off and watch crazy shit happen.
Let me be clear. These movies are not especially good. The first, that Godzilla movie from 2014, it's all right. It's pretty all right. The monster action is certainly the highlight. It's filmed really well. The effects are awesome. The like fight choreography, like I don't know how they do it with these giant fights that happen with these huge CGI monsters, and mostly in like the CGI environments. But it was a fun enough time. I would definitely recommend. I think you'd probably garner some sort of enjoyment out of it.
I'm not anti these movies at all. I don't think. I think if I were to see them, I would enjoy them. But I'm just saying that for you to be giving me crap for not having seen them is rich, coming from someone who would typically look down on this movie, I would imagine.
I'm all for Godzilla fighting King Kong. I think that in particular, though, kind of hits on like a childhood thing more than anything else. Like, I watched Godzilla in 1998 so much when I was a kid. I had the VHS, and it's a terrible movie, mind you. Like, it's terrible. But as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, giant, monster dinosaur type thing, going crazy in New York City. Like, I'm all about that. I saw Peter Jackson's Kong in theaters. Which I was probably way too young to even like really enjoy it, but I distinctly remember watching it and liking it. And so I think just maybe a little bit of nostalgia, but also I think it looks really cool. I mean, I think it's exactly, you know, what the doctor ordered, as far as, you know, especially in a pandemic where we don't have big blockbusters really to enjoy. I think getting to see this at home in a couple months will be a welcome sight, I think, even if it's not a great or particularly good movie.
Yeah, expectations are to be entertained and to watch some crazy carnage, but this would probably, like, I'm probably going to watch the other ones before this going in, but if I don't, I'm still going to watch this. Like, I'm not going to let that hold me back, but I'm excited for it. I did not mean for my commentary to be taken as a slight towards these movies whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
But
no.
I was just simply saying that I don't respect you for not respecting me for not having seen this.
I will say though, the King of the Monsters, the last Godzilla movie, is terrible. Like it's terrible. So that is why my biggest concern is that is the last movie that they made. Like, it's not the same director, of course, but coming off that, I mean, I guess it can't get much worse, but I don't know. I just hope it's good. I really hope it's good.
At least it'll just give us something new to watch, because as you heard our schedule off the top, we're thriving off of these Warner Brothers to HBO Max releases, and we've got one today to talk about. But a couple more pieces of news before we get there. Another trailer. This one, I told Johnny not to even watch it because Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. Do you remember the initial teaser for this?
Absolutely not.
It was, I believe, with the Rise of Skywalker.
What?
And it was just like, no context about the movie, and it was just like Kristen Wiig, and I don't even know who the other person is, but just like their voices having a conversation.
Nah, I have never, like, gun to my head, if you read me this title, I would have no idea, like, what to say about it.
So, lifelong friends Barb and Star embark on the adventure of a lifetime when they decide to leave their small Midwestern town for the first time ever. This movie is coming out very soon. It's coming out February 12th, straight to VOD. It's Annie Mumolo is the other one, and Kristen Wiig. And it just looks bad. I don't know what's been up with Kristen Wiig, but you know, she was fine, I guess, decent as Cheetah. Yeah. But this one is not it, Chief. I can confirm. Not looking forward to this.
I will absolutely not watch this movie. I absolutely,
especially if you're having to pay for it for VOD.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, this movie's gonna make like nothing, I would assume.
It was supposed to come out last summer, July of 2020, and then got pushed to this coming summer. But then Lionsgate just canceled the theatrical release and moved it to VOD in February. So that should show you their faith in this movie as well.
Right. Yeah, it's not looking good. I mean, I like Kristen Wiig, as you said, but I know I'm not gonna be supporting this movie financially.
Unfortunately. Well, Johnny, I'm actually assigning you to write the review for this, so enjoy. All right. Couple quick hitters before we get into our review. Robert Rodriguez is returning to write and direct a reboot of the Spy Kids franchise. Were you a Spy Kids kid, Johnny?
Not really. I think I watched one of them, and it was fine when I was little, but probably not anymore.
Wow, rude. Spy Kids was incredible.
Oh my God.
You cannot hate on Spy Kids. So Robert Rodriguez did the original movies, so he's coming back to reboot his own movies, which is interesting. I wonder how much the vision will change. They're obviously different children, but right. Those movies were like iconic as like fun action family comedies to me as a young kid. First one came out in 2001, so I was 5 years old. So
yeah. Well, I think the main thing I'm curious about is the effects of the originals.
The thumbs.
They're not the best.
The thumbs in the first one, and the dinosaurs and stuff in the second one.
But how I'm curious, like, are they gonna like totally upgrade the look of everything, like for like a modern like setting or audience, or are they gonna kind of like keep the retro, kind of classic like Spy Kids as far as the effects, like the costumes and things like that?
I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, obviously, we're not going to be the target audience for these movies moving forward,
true.
but I'm just excited. Like, I'm excited for the future children who will get to watch these movies.
You're excited on their behalf.
Yes, because I know how good they were, and they were fun movies for me to watch as a child. That I'm excited for it to be revived for them.
I'm not mad at it at all, for sure.
All right, that's enough.
Something I am mad about, Zach.
What is it?
A sequel for The Old Guard has been greenlit at Netflix.
The New Guard.
The Old Guard 2. The New Guard. Yeah. I'm okay. We
all knew it was coming. I know you're
mad. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm not even disappointed. I don't know how to feel, Zach. I mean,
if you listen, this is on you though. If you watched that movie and did not already make up your mind that there was going to be a sequel for it, that's on you.
They were shooting for that sequel, buddy.
Exactly. So why this should not come as a surprise.
They got. I guess they got the numbers they needed, huh? As far as the the streaming and all that.
I'm in. I liked this movie. I'm in.
It'll probably be fine. It'll probably be just as good as the first one. I'm sure Charlize will be back. Kiki Lane will probably be back. Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's certainly not going to be, bottom of the barrel, Netflix action movies or anything like that.
It's not going to be a Project Power.
It's not going to be a Project Power. So, good on them. Good on them. Maybe they will learn from some of the mistakes I felt they made in that first one, and just pump up the screenplay, pump up the action, and fingers crossed it'll be better. I mean, I would be down to watch it. A sequel, because I thought some of the things they set up were interesting. I just wanted to see a little bit better.
As long as Dudley Dursley's back in it, we're good to go. Dudley
Dursley was in literal pieces at the end of the first one, so I'm thinking he's probably not gonna be back.
You never know. He's Netflix's go-to guy.
He really is, though. You would do it too for a check, Zach.
I'm all about the Dudley Sans.
Well,
all right.
Something I am a little bit more excited about, Zach.
Let's hear it.
Just a quick glance. Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana in Spencer. This first image dropped randomly. It's seemingly. I guess they must have started production either just this past week or before that. But she's there. She's standing by the window. She's got her little Princess Diana costume on. It looks fantastic. That's the first thing I'm going to say. The costume, the actual photo, the quality of it. Her I don't know what makeup they've done on her. If they've done an appliance or something, some sort of prosthetic to her face to make her look more like Diana. But wow, I at first thought it was Diana. I did not realize it was Kristen Stewart until I read the
yeah. I mean, looking at the photo, it's not you would never guess that that's Kristen Stewart. At least no, I would not.
You would. This kind of reminds me of the first look we got of Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. It was holy shit, that's uncanny. So I've been critical of Kristen Stewart in the past. I do think she has some talent. I think she fits well into certain roles. I don't know what kind of, what they're going for with this project. I know it's supposed to be kind of a weekend where Princess Diana decides that she's going to leave her husband and, exit kind of the royal family. But I think it has promise. It has promise for sure. And I will say the one other thing that they kind of dropped a bunch of production news along with this, the incredible costume designer Jacqueline Duran, who she won the Oscar for Little Women, and has won several other Oscars and has worked on the Batman, which I'm really excited about. She's doing the costumes for this, so there's another Oscar coming up. Johnny Greenwood, who's one of my favorite composers and famous from Radiohead, and his work with Paul Thomas Anderson, he's doing the score. I've been waiting for a new score from him for a couple years now. So I think it could really be kind of a sleeper, awards contender and kind of juggernaut. So we'll see. I think there's definitely potential there.
Remy agrees with you. He's all in
Thank you,
on
Remy.
Princess Diana.
Thanks, Remy.
But I will say that's interesting. It's interesting to see that this is coming at the same time as season 5 and 6 of The Crown will like venture into Princess Diana's storyline, and Elizabeth Debicki is going to be playing her there. So they'll have like dueling. I don't know when that season. The most recent season just came out this past year, so I don't know. I don't watch it. I don't know what their timeline is for when it's going to come out, but there could potentially be dueling Dianas on screen.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think there's room for both, of course, but it'll be interesting to see the like portrayals and how they differ and how they're similar and all that. I still need to catch up on The Crown, so I can't speak too much to that. But
yeah, I mean, I don't watch it, so I can't throw my opinion out there. But just worth noting, a couple other things. I know it's right up your alley. You're very excited about it. The Snyder Cut has a release date. Zack Snyder's Justice League hitting HBO Max on March 18th. Air horns, burr, 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 confetti. We are pumped. So excited to watch 4 hours of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And the very next day, Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out, and we're going to completely forget about the Snyder Cut. So very excited about that.
I thought the posters were neat enough. I thought they got the job done. March 18th, it's a fine date. It'll be close to, goddamn, 5 years, Zach, almost, since Batman v Superman came out. How old are we, bro?
Time flies when
We're getting
you're
old.
petitioning for a director's cut to be released, you know?
Ain't that the truth? But, I mean, I'll watch it. I'll watch it begrudgingly. It's going to be like
morbid curiosity.
Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna cap. Back in the day, I loved Zack Snyder. I loved like Man of Steel and Watchmen, and I was so Batman v Superman was like my most anticipated movie ever, and I loved it at the time when it came out. I don't know if it was denial, or if I was just a young lad who didn't know any better.
A young lad.
But it is what it is. I think if nothing else, this will offer some like closure to this chapter, hopefully. And I'm not going to be mad about an artist like finally getting to like put their thing out, but how we got here is certainly a strange road. And maybe it'll finally be, concluded on March 18th.
Hopefully that is the end of this era, but let's move on. A couple other, I keep saying this, but I promise it's just a couple other pieces of news. And this isn't even news. This is about news being news. So be on the lookout for some Spider-Man 3 news this week. Apparently Tom Holland has an interview with Variety on the Variety Awards Circuit podcast on February 4th. So from what they are teasing, he has given some information about Spider-Man 3. And at this point, with all the speculation and rumors and stuff, any solid information is welcome, so we can try and put together the pieces of what to expect with that movie. Yeah.
Any news is welcome news. Any info is welcome info. I'm not expecting anything crazy. I mean, I think we'll get maybe some fun insight and some comments.
But we know Tom Holland, though, that he is the loose lips over there. He's going to be like, so me and Toby and Andrew, we were on set, and then we went to go get a hot dog, and then, oh my God.
Hey, I'm not saying do it, but do it, I want a damn title. I want a damn like teaser image, just something. It's just supposed to come out like this year, so I don't think that's asking like too much, but I understand why they're being secretive as well, so I'm not going to complain.
Cloverfield getting a sequel, and not the shitty ones. This is the real deal. We had Cloverfield, then we had 10 Cloverfield Lane, which was a set in the same universe kind of spinoff that was good. And then there was that awful one on Netflix, Cloverfield Paradox. But this is a sequel to the original, to the real deal.
Yes, this is legit happening. Finally, I think, I say finally. I'm excited for it. I watched Cloverfield in theaters literally, I remember it so specifically. Opening weekend, opening night. Then me and my brother, we went and saw it again that weekend. And it was the first movie, I was telling this to Zach earlier, it was the first movie I ever saw multiple times in theaters, like twice. I'd never done that before. Now I've done it with like who knows how many movies, like 50 or something. But yeah, it definitely has a special place in my heart. It's not like a particularly like great movie, but I think it was super cool for the time. One of the early found footage films before that became like its own subgenre. And it was Matt Reeves' like kind of real breakout film. Because he did something like a big monster movie on such a small budget, like in such an interesting way. So I think that provided a jumping off point for him to eventually do, Planet of the Apes movies. And now he's doing The Batman, one of the biggest movies, what could be one of the biggest movies, in the last couple decades. So I think it's just funny how that all works out. And speaking of Matt Reeves and Batman, I think the cool connection here is that Joe Barton, who just got hired as the showrunner of the HBO Max the Batman spinoff show with the Gotham Police Department that they're working on, he's going to be writing the sequel. So J.J. Abrams is producing, Joe Barton's writing it. He just got hired over at HBO Max, and he had success over at Netflix with the show he had there. So he seems like he's got he's pretty talented. I think he can do this justice, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they can come up with.
Again, I told Johnny at the start I have not seen the original Cloverfield. I've seen 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I enjoyed it. So no comment on this one.
You should watch it, though. I think you'd like it.
Final piece of news. I promise. It's the last one. Then we're getting into our review. And this one ties into the review.
Segue. It would have been such a smooth.
Oh, my bad. Jared Leto and Darren Aronofsky are teaming up with Jason Blum for a new horror movie based on a short story from the writer of The Ring, the original Japanese story. Yes. And it's called Adrift. Do we know anything beyond that, Johnny?
So, this is kind of quickly developed over the last week or so. Apparently, Jared Leto has been pursuing this for like a decade. Like, he liked the short story. He wanted to get it made. And then eventually him and his, producing partner, they went to Darren Aronofsky, because they worked before on Requiem for a Dream. And then they're like, hey, let's do this. I like this idea. And then now Jason Blum is involved, who is a horror film icon at this point with his production record. So it seems like this is all coming together pretty quick. And now with this announcement, MGM is apparently in exclusive negotiations to take it on. So MGM, they've been making money moves, for the last year or so. They've been moving, even though they're kind of in a financial crisis right now. Hey, more power to them. The story is set in the dead calm of the open sea, where a fishing boat discovers an abandoned yacht with a strange distress call. A deckhand, who I imagine would be Jared Leto, agrees to take lone control of it while it's towed into port. But soon he discovers why the rest of his more experienced crew members call it a ghost ship. So the script still needs to be written. Scheduling needs to be worked out. Leto and Aronofsky are both busy right now. So it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together. But, Jared Leto has his detractors for sure. I'm a fan. I think he's a talented guy when he has the right team together. I think Aronofsky is a talented filmmaker when he has the right team together. So, with Jason Blum involved as well, maybe they can put something together that will actually be worthwhile. The premise isn't super interesting to me, but maybe there's more to it. I think surely the short story, the guy who came out with The Ring, I think he's a talented writer, I would assume. We'll see how it's adapted though. Yeah,
The Ring was actually the first horror movie I ever saw. Oh, I was at my grandma's house and I watched it with my brother and my cousin, and we were clinching each other on the bed, watching it, and we were terrified. I was probably 7 or 8. I don't know. No, maybe a little older than that, but still I was young and it was scarring. But if it's connected to The Ring in any sense, not story wise, but just that quality of work, I think that I'd be into this. So I'm excited for it, even though it's quite a ways away.
Yeah, who knows? And there's no way we might see it next year, might see it the year after that. Jared Leto's busy. He's doing the Ridley Scott, Gucci project, which, I think I'm excited for that. I mean, the cast for that stacked. And Jared Leto, he's moving all over the place. And one place he is moving more recently is HBO Max, where The Little Things just released over the weekend.
You're not exactly a department favorite. Things probably changed a lot since you left.
You still got to catch him, right?
Yeah.
Not that much has changed then, right?
I can assure you all we are taking a 24/7 all-hands-on-deck approach to these cases.
Guy's a shark. If he stops, he dies. He likes to drive. Probably has a decent car, maybe 2, high mileage.
You must really like my car.
I do. How's the trunk space?
Crushed it.
This is the first of the 2021 hybrid releases that Warner Brothers is doing with HBO Max. So it hit theaters this weekend. It made a decent amount of money, $4.8 million, I think, in the middle of the pandemic, all things considered, for a smaller film like this. Not that bad. And of course, HBO Max as well. So if you have a subscription to that, you can check it out now. Starring Denzel Washington, Oscar winner, Rami Malek, Oscar winner, and Jared Leto, Oscar winner. And directed by John Lee Hancock from a screenplay that he wrote in 1993. So
Not an Oscar winner.
Not an Oscar winner. And this script feels like it was written in 1993. The Rotten Tomatoes is somewhat reflecting that. 48% from the critics, 64% audience score. Zach,
Don't listen to the critics.
What do you rate this thing, man?
Despite all of this naysaying from Johnny and the Rotten Tomatoes critic score, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I thought I'm not going to try and act like it was anything more than what it is. I'm acknowledging that, yes, it was dated. It was familiar. It wasn't anything revolutionary in the murder mystery serial killer genre. But it still hit what it needed to. It checked the boxes that it needed to for me, especially in the movie drought, that this was, knowing that this was like something that is not a streaming original, that it was something that is like a in theaters movie that I'm watching on streaming.
Right.
I guess that maybe made it feel a little different to me, but I gave this a 74 out of 100. I thought it was again, nothing crazy, nothing great, but it was entertaining enough. And I'm also just like, I'm not one of those like true crime podcast people, but like I read the books. I watch the docuseries and like I love Mindhunter. I love anything serial killer related. Like I love Zodiac and Seven, and like that's the way that I feel like you are with sci-fi is like me with these kind of movies. So that like I am justified, like I'm knowingly admitting that I'm like the target audience for this. So that's why my score is probably a little higher than somebody else's.
Fair. Yeah. I wasn't big on this movie, unfortunately. Felt like all the right pieces were there. I'm like I said earlier,
I mean, you had 3 Oscar winners, like
exactly. And
pieces.
like I said earlier, I'm a fan of Jared Leto. Denzel, I mean, what else can you say about him? Not crazy about Malik. And certainly John Lee Hancock, I think, is a horribly mediocre filmmaker. I don't know how he's still making films, but here we are. And yeah, this just felt, it was messy at times. It was very, very like boring. I thought, I hate to use that word because I think that's just so subjective, of course, and like maybe doesn't kind of, it diminishes maybe a little bit, but I don't know. It just didn't have the depth that I would wanted for the characters, for the plot. So yeah, my score is certainly closer to the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm feeling like a 45, 50-ish, 40-ish out of 100. And I gave it like 2 stars on Letterboxd. So yeah, not crazy about this one. But if for those of you who don't know the story, it's Deputy Sheriff Joe Deke Deacon, which is played by Denzel Washington. He joins forces with Sergeant Jim Baxter, played by Rami Malek, to search for a serial killer who's terrorizing Los Angeles. As they track the culprit, Baxter is unaware that the investigation is dredging up echoes of Deke's past, uncovering disturbing secrets that could threaten more than his case.
Got me hooked. No, this, like, again, I'm not going to pretend this is something. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm not gonna pretend it's something that it's not. Like, were there the tropes of like any sort of murder mystery serial killer genre piece? Yes. Like, were they there? Yes. Was it the hotshot young up and comer and the old grizzly veteran? Yes. Like, it was all the basic stuff there was there, but still for some reason I don't necessarily know why. It just like worked for me. I will say we'll get to this in the end. It wasn't incredible because I've got some complaints about the ending, which we can kind of throw the spoiler alert on after we get a little general discussion going. But I think Denzel elevates everything that he's in, regardless of the quality of the script or the editing or anything. You know, if you put Denzel in there, it's an automatic boost of a couple points. Like you, I'm not crazy about Rami. Is it Rami or Rami? Rami Malek?
Rami.
Okay. I'm sorry. Rami Malek, yeah, I mean, wasn't crazy about Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm not super crazy about him. But
Right.
I will say he warmed up to me, like, during I was very not into him at the beginning of this movie, and then he kind of like warmed up to me and I got into it. What did you think about them? And then Jared Leto, an admitted Jared Leto fan, how did you feel about him and his? I feel like this is like typical. This is like a very him performance of like just being weird as weird as possible.
I definitely agree with that. It's very much in his wheelhouse, which had me concerned. But honestly, I didn't think that he was. Well, that's the craziest part about this, and I think this is just a horrible indictment of John Lee Hancock as a director. Probably, the screenplay certainly doesn't do them any favors. But I thought Denzel, Rami Malek, Jared Leto, I thought they were all like not bad necessarily. Okay, Rami Malek might have actually been bad, but I think he might just be miscast, unfortunately. Jared Leto is perfectly cast, but I think out of the three performances, his was the most interesting. I mean, I know he kind of has the showier one where he is like his vocal pattern and the way he walks and his hair
his
and
strut,
his prosthetic nose and all that. But yeah, I just
shout out to the prosthetics, shout out to the makeup.
Hell yeah, Donald Mowat. Donald Mowat, he absolutely killed it.
Friend of the pod.
So that the makeup and hair was definitely one of the highlights, I would say. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but like Jared Leto, like what they did with him, he was just so hard to look at sometimes. And his mannerisms and things certainly didn't help either. So I thought Jared Leto.
And then you got to throw in all those dead bodies as well, like the makeup and the look there.
Yeah, they definitely didn't hold back on that stuff, which I thought was fitting. And that was part of my issue too with this movie, outside of the performances, which I thought were flat for the most part. I thought the movie was most alive when Jared Leto was involved. And you were talking about Denzel, who kind of elevates everything he does, but even here, I thought it was just kind of like,
It was kind of reserved still. Like
it was reserved, but not like in like a way that felt. Like when I think of reserved, I think of like Ryan Gosling in like First Man or 2049 or something like that. Here it was like Denzel was like sleepwalking through the scenes almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could. It wasn't his like most. I mean, reserved as in like he was holding back, as in like there could have been more. You know, like
yeah,
not necessarily like that. It was intentionally reserved.
Yeah. I agree. And there's even a part, are we in spoiler territory at this point?
Yeah, let's throw it out there.
Yeah. So one part is at the very end where this isn't necessarily the acting either. It's just a mess of everything. But like there's a part where Denzel is helping Rami Malek's character, Jim, get away with like killing Jared Leto's character. And it's like completely, I'm not going to say, I mean, he killed him with no reason, essentially. Like he just beat him with a shovel, like on the head. And he like, basically Denzel does all this crazy shit to like help Malek get away, like to cover it up. And then he comes back and he comes back to the site to like finish everything up and help him get away. And he's like, he gives like this little speech, and then he like hugs him and like kisses him on like the cheek, and he's like calls him like, I can't remember if he called him like brother or like something like that. Something like it's some sort of term of endearment.
Right, some affectionate term.
It was just very like, where the fuck is this coming from?
Because they hadn't really, I was questioning
like
that as well. They hadn't really,
each other.
They hadn't really had that sort of like kinship between each other. They were still kind of like standoffish with each other.
Like usually there would be a point. Yeah, you're right, because it is that in that moment of like, in 7, these guys are working together like nonstop to solve this case. And he goes and he has dinner with, Brad Pitt and Gwyneth Paltrow. They have like that family time, and they're just having jokes and like making things casual. And there's a scene in this where Denzel Deke, he goes to, I wish that had been the character's name, Denzel Deke. He just goes over to Rami Malek's house in the morning for like breakfast or something. And like the daughters are there, and like they're hanging out, and the wife is there, and she's kind of worried all the time, but she's like, okay, I gotta take the girls to school. And like she comes over, like kiss him on and dips. But like they never like really it all feels so phony. Like they never engage with each other in like a way that feels genuine. And like even the daughter, and again, goes back to John Lee Hancock's direction, I feel like, more than anything. The daughter like runs up to Denzel and like hugs him and like kisses him on the cheek, and then like leaves. Like, I get what they're trying to do. Again, that's kind of trying to force and establish that intimacy and the connection, the personal connection with him and his family. But it just felt random and unearned and awkward. Like, I don't know if like little kids or like, especially like little girls and like things like that. But if like they had like a strange like older dude like in their house, I really don't think they'd be running up and like kissing them on the cheek. Like, right. If anything, they'd be cowering or like hiding in another room or something like that. Like it was just all so saccharine and like phony. That's the way I would describe it. And there was just many instances of that. And I think part of that goes back to this kind of familiar plot. Like maybe part of that phoniness is that we've seen this done so many times and like so much better. What did you feel like? I said earlier that this was written in the early 90s, even before 7 came out or Zodiac came out. Did you feel that kind of age to it? Did you feel like this was too familiar? Because you enjoyed the plot more than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the whole like, I guess in like a 7 or a Zodiac, it's kind of like, yeah, those are still like long movies, but it's like stuff is like constantly happening. Whereas this was more of like a slow burn type, like you've got your initial couple like victims, but then it's kind of just like letting it all play out as they're basically from the get-go, like make up their mind that Jared Leto is their suspect. And then they're just trying to catch him versus like multiple different, okay, like now there's a new murder and a new murder or something. So it's more like laid back in that sense. And for me, that worked. Like, I think that was able to, I don't know. I just kind of, some people that I've seen like complaints about it said that it was like boring, like you said, like boring, or that they like lost interest in that. But I was still able to find myself like engaged with that just because I was so curious about like, I think they did a good job of like painting the ambiguity of like, is it this guy or is it not? Because there was like solid evidence on both sides, like him just being so damn creepy. It's like, it has to be this guy. But then like they still didn't have that other like hard evidence.
Agree. And I think that's the thing though, for me, it's like, if you have to have, for any movie to be like a success, like you have to have plot. Ideally you have both of them, but you have to have a compelling plot. You have to have compelling characters. And I felt like this movie did not have either of those things. I thought, as you said, not a lot happens. It's kind of just like, seeing where it goes. There's just the one kind of suspect that we're following. And I did think that the ambiguity was certainly a pro, like one of the stronger aspects of the movie, because it did keep you kind of like wondering, like, well, this guy's creepy as hell, but is he really like a killer? Like, does that really add up? Is there evidence there? And I thought that one thing in particular that struck me with this movie, especially compared to something like Zodiac or even Prisoners, which isn't a serial killer movie, but it's that kind of crime thriller.
Especially where there is a creepy suspect that you don't know
yes,
if it is or isn't them.
No, exactly. That's a good point. But here in those movies, the atmosphere is so thick, and it's so like you're constantly on edge. And that's of course a testament to David Fincher and Denis Villeneuve as filmmakers. And I think that kind of guiding hand is certainly missing here. But like in the synopsis that I read earlier, it says they're searching for a serial killer who's terrorizing Los Angeles. And never once in this movie does it feel like Los Angeles is being terrorized. They say there's been 4 murders in like 2 months or something like that, but never once does it feel like the community is on edge. It doesn't feel like the cops or even all that like on edge. It seems like they're just kind of going through the motions. Like this is something, yeah, it's bad, but they're not like acting especially worried about it. Like the kind of the coworkers that like Rami Malek's character has, for example. And it's just and one other thing that really struck me, and this movie is loaded with dumb decisions, don't get me wrong. But one thing in particular that really like stuck out to me and was just absolutely like dumbfounding was there's a scene where it cuts to a couple like jogging, like very randomly, like it just cuts to them. We've never seen them before. They're jogging through like this neighborhood in LA, and it's in the evening, like, sun setting. It's not totally dark out, but I guess they're either like partners or just like friends who like go jogging together. And so they're talking about like, oh, we're going to do this like again, whenever, like tomorrow or like later this week or something. And then he's like, oh, I'll jog you home. And then she's like, "Oh, it's 4 blocks," and she laughs. She's like, "I can."
As if they were not being terrorized by a murderer.
They're not being, as if Los Angeles isn't being terrorized by a serial killer, Zach, as the plot would have you believe. How the fuck does that make sense? And I know I like this makes no sense, lady. This makes no sense. Like, I don't feel bad that you just got murdered because you did the dumbest thing possible. Like. That's the thing too, in horror movies especially. This isn't a horror movie. I mean, you could say there's like some horror adjacent things in it, but like it's hard to empathize or care about characters or situations when the characters are making dumb decisions because the plot needs them to. And this was another situation like that. Even in the opening scene, of course, she goes missing and gets murdered or whatever you want to believe, because she left by herself in the middle of the night. There's a part where she like in the opening scene, there's the highway kind of like chase sort of situation going down. Mm-hmm. There's a young girl and she's just driving down the road and she's singing. It's the middle of the night and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then a car like comes up like right behind her and it's like, scaring the shit out of her, like terrorizing her, drives, speeds by her. And so she's trying to think of like, oh my God, like what the fuck is going on? She speeds by him. And then she's like still like being chased, of course. And then she comes up to like a gas station, like a tiny gas station with like, like a store or something that you can go into. And she's first off, like, why would you, because she parks and she gets out of her car and she runs up to the window and is like pounding on it. First off, there are no cars in this parking lot. There's like clearly no one there. And secondly, like you're safe, like that's dumb. And then once she like, you would think, okay, she's going to realize that no one's there. Like obviously, and the car is getting closer and closer from behind. You would get back in your car and like drive away probably. But no, she runs around the building with her running car open and the door open. And then the person pulls up and like, takes the keys out of her car, is like stalking her around. Thankfully she gets away. But like first off, that's not what you want to present to the audience 2 minutes into the movie is you're like this character acting like an idiot. And like, I'm like, this is not a good sign for what's to come. And that character actually comes back up later in the movie and more dumb shit happens involving that character. With like the witness situation in the police station. Mm-hmm. Like, what in the fuck? This girl is there in the police station, and I don't know if this stood out to you either, Zach, but like, she's there, and when you have a witness in there, and of course they have the suspect, which is Jared Leto's character in there, at the same time. Like they're not supposed to be near each other. Like they're not supposed to cross paths, because then you think that the witness is basically like compromised, because they're going to think that, okay, this is definitely the person. So, and also like, you know, this is like a young girl, like she, you know, is vulnerable. So maybe instead of, she goes to walk her to the bathroom, and then she's like, oh, I can find my way back. It's fine. Like, it's going to take you 2 minutes. Like, why not wait with this girl? Do your job. Make sure she doesn't come in contact with that guy. And then it causes like this whole, I mean, it's not like a whole thing, but it's like a little like distraction for like half a scene. And then they're like, okay, this isn't going to work. Like the witness is not going to work anymore. It's just like things like that pretty much happen.
It's the little things.
It's the little things, you might say. It's the little things that make you not want to watch the movie anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed those things, especially at the opening sequence, like you mentioned.
It was so bad.
But that it didn't like turn me off of the movie as a whole. The little things did not add up to a big thing for me. But it was interesting though, because I actually just started on Netflix. There's like a new docu-series about or I guess it's been out for a couple weeks now, but the Night Stalker.
Okay, yeah.
Who's like a serial killer in Los Angeles, and they actually referenced it. Like one of the police officers or detectives was like, I haven't had this much heat since the Night Stalker. And then also one of the people who escaped from him was saying that they were driving on the interstate, and like he pulled up next to her and then just like smiled and then like kept going or whatever. And I was like, basically I was like, is this about the Night Stalker? So I'm sure that if this was written in the 90s, that there was definitely some like heavy influences from that real life scenario.
Yeah. No, that was I caught that as well, and I didn't know about the Night Stalker like as much as you, obviously. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and yeah, it just. I
want to ask you about the ending.
Please.
You have all these issues. This is actually I was not completely satisfied by the ending.
I was surprised by that, honestly, after watching it.
By the ending or by my lack of satisfaction?
By your lack of satisfaction.
Well, because I mean, again, we put the spoiler warning out there. If you're listening to this, you've probably seen the movie. But so Jared Leto's character convinces Rami Malek to get in the car with him, and he's going to take him. He basically admits to being the killer, and he said he's going to take him to where the body is. They drive out in there, and he's just messing with him. He's just like doing all this to get in his head. He's never killed someone in his life, and he has Rami Malek digging up all these holes out in the middle of the wilderness, and then he finally just like snaps. He keeps talking to him, and he like brings up his daughter and stuff like that. And then, like you said earlier, Rami hits him over the head with a shovel and kills him. But just the whole, and then they like hide the body, and it's revealed that Denzel is put in a similar situation back in his old case where he actually had killed the third victim, whether they covered it up and said it was a serial killer victim as well. So he was also haunted by it, like Rami is going to be. But the biggest thing was like my lack of satisfaction came from just like, was this or was it not? Like we obviously learned that like it was not, because the whole thing, like you were talking about with the woman who was running and who went missing, it was the red beret, and that Denzel had broken into the apartment and supposedly found some evidence, and then he ended up mailing a red beret to Rami Malek, and so that was supposed to give him some sense of closure that you may have killed him, but at least it was the right guy. And then we see that it was actually he just bought a set of hair clips and sent it. So that was my biggest thing, is just like, so it wasn't him, and so you guys are both just moving on with your lives, even though the victim or the suspect is still out there, the person who's murdering these people.
God, I'm really realizing how much I did not like this movie. Okay, so you have to take my word for it. I'm watching this movie, and Rami Malek's character sitting there by the pool and his daughters are swimming, and he's just kind of like disengaged and like like he's upset. I mean, he just killed someone, so it's like understandable. But he gets that letter like that it gets dropped off by like one of the other cops, and his wife takes it to him, and he opens it up, and it says, I think it says "No Angels," or something to that effect. Because earlier in the movie, Denzel's character was referencing that, don't let these murders like basically like consume you to the point where you're like what's the word I'm looking for? God, it's like, don't like make this something that it isn't. In other words, where you're kind of having these victims become like so tightly connected to you, like personally, like where you feel that responsible for them. And so he reads that, and then what falls out of the envelope after the little letter, the little note, is that red beret you were talking about. And as soon as he picked that up and was looking at it, I was like, Denzel's character went and bought that shit and sent it to him. Like he absolutely went and bought that shit and just sent it to him. That's something that he would totally do. And then I wasn't sure if that was ever actually going to be like addressed in any way or like hinted at.
I also think that could have been better left, like, because
ambiguous.
I had the thought as well that like, okay, you don't need to tell us that he did buy it and that now we know that it wasn't him and that now we have all these questions. So like, just let it be the question of like, did he buy it? Did he not? Was it him? Was it not?
They didn't though. And that's what kills me. I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like that was one cool little like ambiguous thing you could have done. But instead, in the very next scene, Denzel's burning all these piles of evidence and he has a literal, like, the beret, it shows, it literally says right on there, and there's an additional one that came in the package. Like, do something else to maybe tease that. Like maybe just show the package, like the back of it, like at a glance or something as he throws it in, and like don't even show what it was. You know what I mean? It could be anything really. And it was just like, man. I just thought it was such a bad ending. Like, and for me, you were talking about like kind of the satisfaction and like knowing that the killer's still out there and they're just kind of moving on and forgetting about it while the other cops like take over. It was just, it was fitting for what we got up to that point, in my opinion. So I wasn't like let down like you may have been. But yeah, I wasn't down with it. And just outside of like even the story and the plotting and stuff, I thought some of the dialogue was really cliche or like cringe at times. Like there's one part where Jared Leto too, like, again, I thought he was fine in the movie, but some of the dialogue they make this guy say, man, it was like he's sitting there in his car and like trying to get Rami Malek to like come with him towards the end. He says, "Oh, P.S. your butt buddy isn't invited." And I'm just like, I literally had to rewind it to make sure I heard it correctly. I was like, P.S. your butt buddy isn't invited. I like, just so many cringe lines like that, like shit that just either doesn't make sense or just sounds so dumb. And I get like this is set in the 90s or whatever, but like even then it's just like there's so much, just you just say something else, like don't even have that line in there. I don't know, I didn't think it added anything. And also I thought more in the first half of the movie, because maybe by the time it got to the second half I kind of like was desensitized to it, but early on I thought the editing was like very like haphazard, like very quick, and like lots of like shots, like multiple cameras or something. Like there was a scene in particular where they're in a diner early on and there's two people sitting in a booth, one on each side, and then Denzel I think is standing there, and it's just like between all three of them, like bam 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 bam, and it's just, I was like, this is a lot happening right now. Like I don't know why these shots are so short, or like why you're not letting anything like sit or breathe for like more than a second. But yeah, it was just a mess all over. I thought
I've seen that as a common complaint, but I didn't notice it. Like it didn't stand out enough in my watch to bother me. But I know you're not alone in that.
Yeah. And I thought the last thing I guess I'll say, and this is more of a positive, is that I thought the score was fine. I thought it was pretty good. Thomas Newman.
It was I that was something I noticed actually, where it was like almost like cheerier than like a murder mystery should have been, I feel like.
Agreed. Yeah, it was kind of off-putting in like a way that I thought worked for the movie. Although I could see why some people like would feel otherwise, but yeah, this one, I think this script could have stayed in the drawer personally, but hey, it's out now, and
it's out. Yeah. It's free if you have HBO Max. I think if you're a true crime murder mystery fan, you'll watch it. It won't be your favorite, but you'll get some enjoyment out of it. If that's not really your thing, then I would say probably better off to leave this one in the queue.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I'm not going to completely say it was the worst thing ever, but I wasn't a fan.
Well, hopefully next week we will be mutually fans of what we're going to be reviewing. So. But thank you all for listening today. We really appreciate the constant support for everything that we do. So much appreciated.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening. I couldn't do it without you. You know, follow us on Twitter, on Instagram. Got lots of content over there, polls, all sorts of things you can get involved with. Stay up to date with what's going on the show. Follow us on TikTok. Give us a like on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube, where we post all the podcast episodes. If you'd like to check them out over there. And you can find all those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, give us a subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Google, YouTube. They're all there, and so are we. And come back next week for our review of Malcolm and Marie, the latest Netflix potential Oscar contender. We'll see. Are we going to be offended by this movie as film critics? Who knows? We'll have to come back and find out, and we'll get a little WandaVision action in there for you as well. So be sure to come back, and we'll see you next time.